The sounds of the moonlit forest surround me with its chirping crickets and gentle rustling of leaves. I always found a nighttime nature walk to be a great way to soothe my hyperactive thoughts, especially since I'm more of a night owl anyways. As I ambled through the woods, I soon arrived at the creek where I usually turn around and head home. I examined my surroundings and noticed it separated the familiar maple trees from a strange looking land. I stared at the other side in awe. The underbrush was lusher, and there was bioluminescent moss growing on the cherry trees. The blossoms glowed in the pale moonlight, making them appear ethereal. A slight breeze rustled the trees, causing petals to drift down and create a path through the brush. There was a new world begging to be explored. I glanced up at the moon to check the time and realized it was almost midnight. I made a mental note to return the next night and quickly made my way home. The next evening, I made my way back to the place I'd found before. I leaped over the creek with ease and picked my way through the brush as I followed the petal path. I was extra careful not to trample any of the flowers that grew on the ground. I eventually came to a grassy clearing with a weeping willow tree in the middle of it, but it wasn't like any of the ones that I've seen. There were white jasmine petals instead of the usual drooping leaves. Violet fireflies flitted all over the place, and the occasional petal would drift off the tree as it swayed in a gentle breeze. I jogged over to it and carefully parted the fronds with my hands. Inside, a small boulder sat at the base of the trunk. I took a seat and smiled. I'd found a peaceful spot that I'd have all to myself. I heard the caw of a raven, which jerked me back to reality. Startled, I looked around to find the source and found it perched on a branch above me.
Well, hello there.
I called to it. It cawed at me, almost as if to greet me in return. I held up my wrist to see if I could coax it closer. It simply cocked its head and fixed its unsettling gaze on me. I lowered my arm back down to my side and sighed. Something spooked the raven, and it cawed indignantly as it flew away. I took this as my cue to leave, and hurried out of the clearing, back to the familiar maple trees. In my haste, I stumbled over a root and fell into the creek, scraping my shin on the way down. I quickly scrambled back to my feet and kept running, adrenaline dulling the pain. Once I arrived home, I made sure to lock the door. I plopped up onto the couch, exhausted as the adrenaline began to fade. I had to get to the bottom of that presence, and I had a feeling the raven was a crucial part of whatever it was. The next time I returned to the clearing, the raven came to greet me. It perched on the tree branch right above my head, and I again held up my wrist. This time it hopped down to perch on me. I lowered my arm to see the raven up close. Its iridescent feathers shone in the soft bioluminescence of the clearing, and it cocked its head at me curiously.
You are such a pretty bird.
Praised, and it cawed softly in reply as it puffed up its chest. I started to giggle, but I felt a sinister presence nearby. It sent a chill down my spine. I surveyed my surroundings and discovered deep blue eyes staring at me from the shadows. The color reminded me of my favorite gemstone, lapis lazuli. The raven flew into a nearby tree, leaving me to confront this thing alone.
I know you're there. Show yourself.
I shakily called out.
You speak the words of a brave knight, yet your tone is that of a timid mouse.
A feminine voice responded in a serene yet disquieting tone. It seemed benevolent, yet her honeyed words created an overwhelming sense of unease.
I'm not scared of you.
I countered, my tone sounding much more confident than I felt. I didn't know the lady's intentions, nor did I know the cause of her lurking about.
Nor I of you,
She replied as a figure moved through the shadows. My fear only amplified as the creature stepped into the moonlit clearing. I recognized her as a dark fae, proven by the small silver horns atop her head and the mighty jet-black angel wings that dragged behind her with each step. She paused a moment to stretch them. Each one was easily 3.5 arms length long, with feathers the size of my thumb. Her long hair was the color of fresh fallen snow, and her skin of dark chocolate. She seemed to be around 16 or 17, which meant she was the same age as me. She glanced in my direction and flashed me a fanged smile.
hello, Beastie.
She addressed me in that same honeyed tone. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, yet her presence soothed my anxieties.
My name isn't Beastie. It's...
Amethyst. I know.
How do you know my name? Who are you and what the hell do you want with me?
She simply took a step toward me instead of replying. I took a step back in response. The stance continued for a while, until my back hit the trunk of a willow tree. I heard the soft shh of her wings trailing in the grass, signifying her approach to the tree. The fronds parted to let her through, without her even touching them. She closed the distance between us in 2 elegant strides. Her face was inches from mine, eyes boring straight into the very depths of my soul. It took all my willpower not to break eye contact, my resolve breaking only a few seconds later. I squeezed my eyes shut. The intensity of her deep blue eyes was unnerving, and I was scared shitless. For all I knew, this girl could have wanted me dead.
You've changed so much, Amy.
My eyes shot open as anger flared inside me. Amy was the name an old friend gave to me years ago. What right did she have to use it? Adrenaline started pumping through my veins. I lashed out in a blind rage as I grabbed her shoulders and pushed her back, knocking her off balance. Before she could react, I quickly grabbed her wrists with one hand and pinned her to the tree with the other. She yelped and struggled against me, but I had an iron grip on her. When she realized I had pinned her wings down as well, she immediately stilled and hung her head dejectedly. I leaned in close and curled my upper lip.
How the hell do you know about the secret name?
I snarled, and she took a deep breath to calm herself before speaking.
I was the one who gave you that nickname.
Bullshit.
I hissed angrily as I pulled my pocket knife from my boot.
I swear to the gods, if you did anything to my friend, you will pay very, very, very dearly.
To emphasize my point, I pushed her hands a little higher and pressed the shiny blue blade of my knife to the joint where her wing and shoulder blade connected. She cried out and her eyes widened in fear. Her fearful gaze seemed familiar. I remembered where I'd seen it before. The innocent exchange from my childhood replayed in my head as the voices rang in my ears.
Are you okay?
Thank you. That trap was really scary.
What's your name?
My name is Cloudheart, but you can call me Clover.
My name's Amethyst. I don't have a nickname.
And let's come up with one.
Okay. What about Amber?
Nah, it doesn't fit you.
Then what's your idea?
What about Amy?
I like it.
Yay! Oh, I gotta go. I'll see you later, Amy.
Bye, Clover. I promise I won't forget you.
I snap back to reality, and my vision is blurry with tears. I blink them back as I let go of her before putting a sheathed pocket knife back into my boot and walking away from the Fae. I parted the fronds and started going deeper into the mystical woods. The girl called out for me.
Amy.
I walked faster.
Amy?
I started to jog.
Amethyst.
I broke out into a full run. I had explored these woods before, so I knew of other peaceful places. I felt tears roll down my cheeks, and I didn't even care at that point. I eventually arrived at another favorite spot, a cliff that overlooked the ocean. The waves were calm, and my wooden tree swing swayed gently in the salty breeze. I slumped onto the swing and buried my face in my hands. She was right. I had changed. Not only did I break my promise that I wouldn't forget her, I threatened to hurt her, and almost caused her demise. According to legend, wingless fae become a shell of their former selves and usually die within a month or so. I was so lost in my thoughts, I didn't notice that my friend had perched in the crook of the tree. But after a moment, I felt her presence.
Go away.
I growled shakily.
No.
She replied.
Go away!
I yelled with a sob.
Make me.
She retorted.
No, go ahead. Really. Abandon me again, why don't you?
I stated bitterly. With those words, she hopped down from her tree perch and sat crisscross on the ground in front of me.
Get it off your chest. I can take it.
She assured me as she braced herself for the worst.
All right then. Here goes. After I helped you the first time, you just left. Like, poof. No more Clover. For the longest time, I thought you were a dream or a figment of my imagination. And I was going through a real tough fucking time at home. Having a friend to talk to would have helped me, but no. You had to go off with your charm and disappear for what, 12 years? I mean, you could have warned me the day we met. But you decided it was better to just leave me be. It was unfair and cruel and...
I felt the tears start up again, but I quickly wiped my eyes and recollected my thoughts as I stood up.
It was cruel and unfair because every day for about 2 years I'd go to that same spot to wait for you, alone in the woods. About halfway through the 3rd year, I gave up waiting and I cried myself to sleep that night because I knew you weren't coming back. But I never intended to break the promise I made. So I continued to go to the spot we first met, and I left a flower there every day. Even in the harshest of blizzards, I'd make myself go over there and leave something. But I broke that promise today and almost killed you because of it.
I broke down after finishing my sentence. At some point, she walked over because when I looked up, she was right in front of me. She had a gentle smile and her wings stretched to their full length.
I think someone needs a hug.
I nodded with a sniffle, and she immediately pulled me into a comfortably tight hug. I buried my tear-stained face into the crook of her neck, and she just hummed in approval. Her wings wrapped around me, acting as a set of really fluffy arms.
I'm so sorry.
I murmured into her skin. She was so warm, and her presence was soothing.
You know, you never broke your promise.
She reassured softly, and I looked up at her.
When I called you Amy, you were ready to murder a stranger to find out what happened to me. You might have forgotten my name, but you didn't forget me. It took me a long time to get back here. But I'm here now, and that's what matters.
She explained as she threaded her fingers through my messy purple locks. I yawned and smiled sleepily as she chuckled softly.
Do you still live in the Maple Woods?
She asked, and I hummed in affirmation.
Okay, then your house isn't that far from here. How do you feel about riding on my back?
Wait, seriously?
I popped my head up in disbelief, and she nodded. I was now wide awake and giddy with excitement.
Yes, please.
All right, you know the drill.
She let go of me and hunched over slightly. I gently jumped onto her back, and she wrapped her arms under my legs as I wrapped mine around her neck. She gave her wings a test flutter to see if she could move them, then nodded, satisfied with the result.
Hold on really tight, okay?
Before I could say anything in reply, she threw her wings below her, and we shot straight up into the air. I squeezed my eyes shut as I held on for dear life. Once we reached the top, she beat her wings in a steady pattern to hold us in place before tapping my leg.
Quite the view, isn't it?
I opened my eyes, and the gorgeous view took my breath away. I could see where the maple forest and the Feyland intersected in one spectacular burst of color. She squeezed my thigh affectionately before folding her wings, causing us to drop in the air. After falling for a few seconds, she spread them again, and we caught the updraft. I laughed as we lazily glided on the breeze, my adrenaline spiking a little too much. She beat her wings twice to get some speed as we flew back to my house in comfortable silence. After a moment, I had to break it, as I'd been dying to tell her something.
Hey, Cloud.
I asked tentatively, and she hummed in reply. I screwed up my courage and gently whispered in her ear.
I missed you.
I missed you too.
She responded. I could practically hear the smile in her voice and sighed. The moment was over too soon as I saw my house below us. I pointed it out, and she nodded before landing gracefully at the front door. I started to get off her back, but she stopped me.
Can I carry you to your room? I mean, you're tired, and I just don't want you to trip.
Yes, Dork, you can carry me, but on one condition. You stay the night, just as friends. You can sleep on the couch or something. I don't want you to go just yet. It'd make me feel a little better.
I smiled as I watched her cheeks turn a shade darker than they already were.
I'd rather share a bed with you, 'cause you're fun to be around. You know?
It was my turn to blush as I laughed and playfully swatted her arm.
Whatever. Let's just get inside before it gets dark. The door is unlocked. My room is literally straight across from it.
A moment later, she tossed me onto my bed and crawled on the other side of me. We faced each other for a moment, both of us smiling like giddy schoolgirls before my instincts took over. I curled up against her with my back against her chest. I kicked the blanket up enough so I could pull it over us.
Good night, Cloud.
Good night, Amethyst.
She whispered, gently wrapping a protective wing around me. Before I fell asleep, I realized I felt safe for the first time in a very, very long time.